of the business, and I decided that product was the area that interested me most, but I didn't feel like I had the technical chops, specifically with regards to pulling my own data from a database, manipulating that data in Excel to pull insights, and then using some sort of data visualization tool like Tableau to bring those insights powerfully to my audience in a compelling way. And so I didn't quite have what I needed to make that change or to try and break into that industry until I found the Udacity Nanodegree program. And the business analytics program that I went through taught me exactly those things. I learned SQL to pull my own data. I learned Excel in-depth formulas so I can manipulate that data to find powerful insights. And then I learned Tableau so that I could put those insights into a visual form and make them more compelling and powerful for my audience. Because of that, I was given a trial to join the product team. I performed well throughout that trial because of the preparation of the Nano degree, and then I was granted a position on the product team after that, which is where I am today.
Right, great. So I think that's also very inspiring, considering starting from customer service now as a project manager. I think because of that experience, you have been able to change to something product, which is eventually is learning about the customers. So yeah, that's really great, and I'm sure a lot of us will think would have something about what project manager does, because they must have been interacting with them a lot. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Celeste, for sharing your wonderful stories and your experience. And I just can't, I'm just more excited to ask you more questions on behalf of all the participants that we have. All right. So before, without any further ado, I actually have one question. So I think so all of you have done actually briefly talk about it, but if you could talk more about it, I think Megha, started first about her journey about digital marketing. But yeah, if you could more about, what was your reason from a professional point of view for picking the Nano degree digital marketing? What was your reason behind it?
Sure. So when I first started with my job hunting process, I were applying for a lot of jobs, but I were offered the job roles that were very general, but they were not related to marketing that I was passionate about. So when I started applying for jobs, what most of the recruiters were looking into was whether you have experience in some real life projects or not. So that was tricky. At that time, I realized that whatever courses I were taking back then, like the free courses, they were not making me career ready, like job ready. So that's why I took Nano degree, because each and every module is supplemented by a real life project. So I started working on them, and yeah, at the end of the Nano degree, I had a lot of projects, and then people were really impressed that since I have done so many projects, I am the right fit for the role. So that's
Great. Thanks so much. Celeste, would you like to talk about your reason from, going into business analytics Nano degree, considering you've been into customer service, now you're project manager. So I think you, wanted to do something, but yeah, I think if you could share your reason for choosing it, that'll be really, really helpful.
Sure. So it's worth stating that the company I joined is a startup. And the reason that's worth stating is that it means that everyone here has like 10 jobs that they do. And that's very true for the product people in specific. We didn't have at the time data analysts. We didn't have, business intelligence teams to pull this data and manipulate it for us. And so if you wanted to drive any insights, you needed data to do that, and we only had ourselves to pull it. Only I didn't know SQL, and I didn't know how to move that data and do anything with it and pull anything out of it. I was at the point where I would, if I needed to get to the bottom of a spreadsheet from the top, I would click down each cell all the way to get to the bottom. Okay, that's not how you're supposed to do it, just so you know, there's a shortcut. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I wanted to fill that gap and make myself marketable for the position that I wanted, because I saw that with a startup, there's always a lot of lateral flexibility and there's a lot of opportunity to grow into new teams. So I wanted to jump on that wave, but I needed the skills to get there. Luckily, my company actually offers a professional development budget, and so I was able to use that to get my manager's approval and get this Udacity Nano degree program rolling. Business analytics was a natural fit because it was exactly what I wanted to do. I already had a base of SQL, but I wanted to get better at it, and it helped me do that. I already had a basics of Excel and sheet manipulation, but I wanted to get better at it, and it showed me how to do that as well. And similarly with Tableau, I had only had a very, very shallow introduction, and it really gave me the deep dive and helped me feel like I was in control of my own data, and therefore here in this company of my own destiny.
Great, great. Yeah, I still, to date, I still struggle with Excel, and although I have learned, pick up some tricks to do it, and luckily for me, I don't need to really press every time to go to that, particular cell. But yeah, I think I've been that place. I can certainly say that, where you're coming from, and definitely must have been really good to learn all those things, and definitely being a project manager again, it's a big achievement. Thanks so much. Right, Edward, I mean, you have done a lot of nano degrees. So what was your reason for going from one nano degree to another nano degrees? So what was your thought behind that professionally?
Sure. When I first started taking nano degrees, machine learning and data analyst were the only two that were available within data science. But as the breadth of nano degrees broadened and more became available, I decided to focus a little bit more. Some of them were job related. I took the React nano degree because that helped me find new contracts as a web developer. The other nano degrees were a little bit more based on my own interest and things that I've been reading. So a lot of the material in the AI nano degree follow material in the Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach, which is the textbook by Peter Norvig. And more recently, the deep learning and natural processing nano degrees specifically relate to my work at Spirit AI. The work that I do on the Ally product, which has to do with the classification of toxic behavior in game communities, uses natural language processing and natural language understanding to a large extent. And even though I don't necessarily write a lot of that code, it does help knowing what other data scientists are working on. That's sort of how I chose that path. To answer your question from earlier about how did I manage attacking and addressing so many, the pattern that I followed is that even though the course schedule is laid out in a linear process, which has a certain narrative, I did jump around and found that some material in a different order worked for how I was learning it. I also would look at projects before I started the material. So that way I understood what the project was trying to tackle. As I was going through the material, I would be doing the project in parallel rather than right at the end. And I found that was a good workflow to work through the nano degrees relatively quickly.
Great, great. Yeah, I think, based on those experiences, specifically in AI, AI is always a talk in town, and combining this with the web development experience itself is very niche. So, it's really, again, inspiring to hear that, besides just doing web development, which itself is a very big domain to begin with, you have more going in depth with the data science and artificial intelligence. So great, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions post this event just to talk about AI or data science particularly. So just be ready for those questions. All right. Okay. Thanks again, everyone. Okay. So I think one of the questions that is very prominent, which is already there, and I also wanted to talk to you about this, what are the things that you really find impactful, that actually help you in finding your, your career path? Because earlier you were doing a different stuff. Now you're in different stuff. I think you briefly talk about in an interview stuff, but what one thing that really stood out, which actually helped you to find your career path in the current role that you're in?
Can I take this one?
Yeah, please, let's go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone ever had that science professor who wanted to teach you about specificity, and they use this peanut butter and jelly sandwich as an example. Okay, and they do this thing where they've got like a bag of bread, and they've got a jar of jelly, and they've got a jar of peanut butter, and they ask the class, tell me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the class will say, well, you just put jelly and peanut butter on the bread, and then you eat it. And so the teacher takes the jar of jelly and the jar of peanut butter and places them on top of the bag of bread, and tries to pick up the whole thing and pretend to take a bite, and the students all laugh, and it's quite funny because the idea is that you're supposed to say, take the slice, open the bag of bread, reach into the bag of bread, grab the slice of bread, pull out the slice of bread. You can go so in depth with it. I love that kind of stuff. That is my bread and butter, forgive the pun, but I, didn't know that you could make a career out of it. That is apparently a lot of what product does. And I only learned that because I had the opportunity to talk to product people. And, I was, as I said, a customer support person, but there was a product person that I really admired. And I just asked them, hey, can we grab coffee, once a week and chat about your experience on the product team? And he said, yeah, absolutely, which is very kind of him. And you won't always get that lucky, and that's okay. And you just keep asking folks. And so we went and had weekly coffees, and he told me about product, and I asked all these questions, and it turned out you get to figure out how stuff is built and why people want stuff and who thinks what and how you can satisfy all their needs. And it's just it's so intellectually stimulating. I really love it. So that's what I found about product that I knew I really loved, was how the details really play out on something.
Right. Great, thanks. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead, Edward. Yeah.
Sure. And this actually touches upon one of the questions that's in the chat. The transition from web development to AI really concerned me. I didn't think that I'd be able to compete at a similar level of seniority in a company that I'd built up as a web developer. And I didn't want to go back to being a junior engineer in an AI field. So I was trying to figure out, how do I negotiate that process? And I found that a really good way to do that is to take a job in a company that does the domain work that you want to do, but leveraging the experience that you have. So I took a job as a senior engineer working on the stream processing platform at Spirit AI. And at a startup, there are more problems to solve than people to solve them. And nobody's going to be annoyed with you for taking responsibility to solve problems that need solving. So I transitioned from web development and doing more software engineering into AI engineering by simply helping solve the problems that needed solving in that area. And it didn't actually take that long for that work to be recognized and for the company to turn around and effectively redefine my role around that work. That's, I think, particularly true in startups where the idea of a role is very fluid. Celeste was talking about this. Everybody is doing multiple jobs, which means that there's a lot of opportunity for career progression and transitioning between roles. And it's really up to you to try and take advantage of those opportunities when you're in a space like that.
Great, thanks so much for sharing that. Right, Megha, would you share yours? I think you've already talked about, a lot about this, but yeah, if you could just brief more, that'll be great.
Yeah, actually, I don't have anything to add here. So yeah, like you asked, what was the most impactful thing that, made me choose this career? So like, traditional marketing is getting old and old, and it is less targeted, like the billboards. There, there it is very difficult to measure like how many people actually saw your ad. And once I heard a talk in my family that, the future of traditional marketing is nowhere, and you have to get into digital marketing because, technology is advancing. So that day I realized that to keep pace with this generation, I have to get into digital marketing. So I think that was the thing that made an impact in my life. And I made a decision that this is what I would do for the rest of my life.
Got it. Right, thanks so much for sharing. All right, so now that's, apart from the good stuff, let's talk about the challenges. So what were the biggest challenges, you experienced when applying to the jobs related to your ND, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Shall I go ahead with that?
Yeah, please, Megha, go ahead. Yes, thanks so much.
After completing my Nanodegree, when I first started applying for jobs, a lot of people were asking me like, what you have done in this field. Can you please show your projects? So it became very difficult for me to send a link of the projects. So what I did was to solve this problem, I created a website, and there I put all my digital marketing projects. And next time, like whenever I were applying for jobs, I started giving them the link to my website So that was one of the best thing that I ever done. So like Megha asked in a question that how she should search for job because she is unemployed, as she mentioned. So I think you should create a website and put all your projects and just, tell people that what you have done and showcase your projects as a backup, and you will definitely get hired if people are impressed by your projects. And yeah, my nano degree, student of the month quiz was organized every week. So I used to create presentations for the same. So, Udacity did help me to improve my presentation skills. And if you want, I can show you my projects. Like I used to create presentations for all the projects. So yeah, it did help me a lot.
Okay, thanks. So Megha, I think it'll be really helpful if you could, just post a link of the website that you just mentioned in the
Yeah,
chat.
it's actually there on my LinkedIn profile under portfolio. So we can connect.
Sure. So we'll take your LinkedIn, profiles at the end, and if you wish to connect with the students, they will reach out to you over LinkedIn. So that'll be really, really great. Okay. Thanks so much for that, Megha. Right. Who wants to go next now?
I'll talk about a challenge with the transition process or interview job getting process.
Yeah, please.
It's pretty hard to convince someone that you are correct when you say, I know what I'm doing, especially when it comes to data. And in software startups, it's all, if you can't back it up with data, nobody wants to listen to you, which can be seen as a shortcoming for sure. And you need to bring the human into things. But I walked in there saying, I think I can do great with data. And they said, oh yeah, prove it. And so similar to Megha, I actually used my Udacity projects. I pulled out the things that I had done and made in my nano degree. And I said, look, I made this profit and loss statement. Look, I made this dashboard. Look, I made these things myself. I do know what I'm doing. I do know how to find the answers, even if I don't have the answers already. And I think that was a really powerful leg up in that process and really made me seem very put together and very professional to overcome that challenge.
That's really great. Yeah, I think we have always been very positive about the fact that these projects are really helpful, and it's just not about completing those projects. It's about how you're able to explain it to to the employers, to the interviewers who are asking about this. So I think that's that's a key takeaway from those experiences. And so that's one of the one of the guys say that one of the members in the participant members says if they would like to connect with you over an opportunity next insurance, would that be possible or not? So we will talk about it at the end of the event, but yeah, this is something that I should wanted to bring it up to you this
We're hiring, just FYI.
Great, thanks. It's good news then. Thanks so much, Suresh, for that. All right, Edward, it's your turn now.
Sure, and it follows a similar theme. In engineering roles, GitHub plays an absolutely massive part of the hiring process. It's where you can demonstrate your work. It's where you can demonstrate your personal projects and Udacity projects you can put into GitHub projects. And whether you build a website around it, that might be suitable for certain projects. But as long as you demonstrate an interest and you demonstrate an ability to problem solve in that domain, employers don't really care whether it's work that you've done for a company or it's paid work or it's something that you've done on your own. And in fact, demonstrating that you can drive yourself to learn something new in your own time and build projects in your own time, and you're self-directed and you're interested in continuous education is a massive benefit. It's absolutely critical because everybody's expecting you to continue learning while you're in the job, and the job is going to change while you're working in it. So showing that you're able to demonstrate that ability is massive.
I just want to pile on to that and say what Edward just said is critically important. The fact that you are out there pursuing education on your own time and learning because you want to and you think it's the right choice for yourself, that's what differentiates you. That's why you are the right fit, the right candidate, the right new hire. And showcasing that is actually, I think, to Edward's point, more important than the actual final product of what you produced. While that matters, it's the fact that you went out there to do it. So really lean on that and say, look, I am a learner, I am a grower, I seek out opportunities to improve myself and myself as an employee. So just worth piling on to that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Celeste, for adding that on the top of what already been discussed about Edward. And I think, yeah, definitely it shows that kind of when you highlight those projects during the interview, it makes the person more interesting. Nobody just looking for a yes or no answer saying, do you have experience? Yes. So you should say, what kind of experience? Do you have strength? Yeah, 3. No, you should tell what kind of strengths that you have. How did you get those kind of strengths? So that's pretty helpful. But yeah, I think there's another prominent question I wanted to ask you that, okay, so when you were there in the interview, we got the idea, but what before the interview, when a lot of times students don't even get shortlisted, their resume don't get through to the interview phase. So, maybe if you could share about something, the strategies that you tried applying, to the jobs, and that's really helped you with getting an invitation to the interview.
Sure, I can talk about that. When you're first starting out, it's really hard, and it is a numbers game. When I applied for, or when I actually got my first engineering job, I applied to 100 companies and was offered 1 interview and was lucky enough to actually get a job at that company. But once you get a little bit of experience, you're able to maneuver a lot more easily in the workplace. You can try and get experience that is maybe tangential to what you're currently doing in work, but is closer to what you want to be achieving. And then you use that as a stepping stone. Once you have a little bit of experience in one job, you tend to be a lot more marketable, and then you can be a little bit more selective. And maybe this is an approach that is maybe very commonly discussed, but it applies to transitioning careers as well. That maybe be a little less selective for the first job or the first opportunity. But if there's a way for you to leverage that and get closer to where you want to go, then I see that as being a good way forward, and is often a more productive approach than spending a lot of time looking for the perfect job and not necessarily getting the experience that could help you get there along the way.
Great, thanks.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, Celeste, please.
I understand the perspective of playing a numbers game, and that in some industries that may be what it requires. My own experience differs from that a bit. I have found that the more successful way to get an invitation to an interview is through networking. I tried the numbers game, and for the types of roles that I was interested in, it didn't work. I threw my resume down so many black holes that I doubt anyone ever looked at. And applying through LinkedIn and applying through Glassdoor or jobs.com, whatever these platforms are. No one's really looking at those. Honestly, the way that people get jobs in the industry that I'm in right now today, in the area that I'm in, this may not be true for you, but it's true for me, is by knowing people who know people and figuring out who knows someone. And you can do that through Facebook, you can do that through LinkedIn, you can do that through the people that you talk to every day. Hey, do you know anyone who works at X company? And so for me, it is about finding the company I want to work at, seeing if I know anyone who knows anyone there and whether I can work my way in towards it. And maybe if I really can't, there's no 4th step connection that I can talk to, then I might change which company I'm looking at and try a different inroad. I might even be exploring multiple at the same time. But for me, it's about getting someone who is near someone else to get a coffee with you, to send your resume to their colleague who's 1 step closer to a hiring manager, to send it to their hiring manager who's actually in charge of the role. And I've actually found that to be much more successful for me personally, can't speak to anyone else's experience, than playing a numbers game on this particular one. So I would say if you know anyone who is in the sector that you want to be in, regardless of what company they're at, talk to them, figure out who they know, find them on LinkedIn, find them on Facebook, look at who they know, who might be somewhere near the company or companies that you're interested in, and just try and get a coffee with them. See if it is a good fit even.
Great. Yeah, thanks. And I think, we do have, we wanted to actually talk about networking, but that's great that you really brought that up. I think we'll certainly take that in the next portion, and I'm actually going to ask you about this in details about, the networking platforms that you mentioned. But yeah, since I think, Celeste, you mentioned that you also have been interviewing a lot of guys, for maybe for your team, or you may have been part of the hiring process also. So I definitely take those things in account, that networking is very important. But once a candidate is there, what do you see in that candidate? Who's it is sitting before you and he's just presenting a resume? From an interviewer perspective, what are things that you would really keen to look at in the person?
Definitely. And yes, I have been doing a lot of interviewing lately. Yesterday, I think I saw 4 candidates, and that's ate up almost my entire day. It's been, in case, just for context here, our company just got a $250 million funding round, and we are now a unicorn. And so all of a sudden, we have a whole lot of candidates for all of these open positions that we have. Go figure. So we're doing a lot of interviewing. We are trying to hire and scale quickly. And so I've become one of our interviewers, which, given how recently I joined the product team, which was earlier this year, it's really exciting and awesome that I get to participate in that interviewing and hiring process. And one of the things that it has taught me is what to look for when I am going into an interview. And so as an interviewer, I'm learning a lot of how to be an interviewee, which is fantastic. So some of the things that I'm looking for, right off the bat, I want someone to look me in the eye and give me a handshake. Obviously I want you to be confident in why you're here and that you're the right candidate for the job. I ask people, obviously I read their resume and their breakdown of their career history, and I know what I find interesting, but I tell them, what do you find most fascinating about your career? Give me the highlight that you think is most interesting. So that tells me a lot about folks. Prepare for some introspective questions like that, things about why you're here, why are you in this industry, why are you doing what you do? So prepare some answers for that. Specifically for product, we run cases. We do case-based interviews. And so it can be a case about product design. It can be a case about go-to-market strategy. It can be a case about product market fit. There's all kinds of things that it could be about. So I would say, depending on which area of the business you're looking at, are you on the growth side? Are you on the servicing existing customers side? And then understand what the area is that they're going to ask you about. Because if it's a growth question, they might say, imagine that you are the CEO of this company and you decide to launch this new product. What would you do to tell the public about it and get it off the ground? And that's pretty open-ended. So what I'm looking for a question like that is structure. I want you to zoom out and say, okay, well, what is the company goal? What are we trying to achieve here? Okay, great. Based on that, what metric are we trying to move? Okay, great. Based on that, what are the users? Who are the users? What do they want? What are their needs? Where are the gaps today? Okay, based on that, here's how I would talk to them about it. And so then you ideate, and then you bring solutions, and then you prioritize those solutions based on the impact they might have. So really, I'm just looking for that structure. I don't need you to tell me yes or no, we're going to launch this thing. I need you to tell me how you would get to a yes or a no. And that's going to be true on the growth, on the servicing, on every single side of product. It's actually very similar to data analyst roles as well, because the interviews will be a lot more technical. They'll be a lot more numbers based, but they'll also have a lot of business thinking. They'll ask about main business metrics like CAC, customer acquisition cost, or LTV, lifetime value. These are things you'll learn in the Nanodegree program. These are things that you can learn in the workplace as well, but if you want a quick boost to get there, I would take the Nanodegree program to learn about them. You'll learn about return on investment, and you're going to need to be able to speak to that if you're interviewing as a business analyst specifically. So these are some of the things that I'm looking for: is structure, critical thinking, and the ability to think strategically from a high level, even if you are kind of thrown in at the weeds. I want you to zoom out. So that's kind of what we're looking for.
Great. Yeah, I think that's really helpful and it's very detailed. And I think what you said, specifically for the guys whether in School of Business, they would definitely be very, they'll be really keen to know that kind of stuff, which they never get to know, because most of the times interviews don't give them a feedback. They say, hey, we'll get back to you. That's a staple answer that everyone gets. But yeah, I think it's one of the most detailed, detailed stuff that ever got to know from someone who's already a part of the interview process. So that's super helpful. Right. So I'll actually going to ask about the networking, but I want to ask Megha about her experience of the challenges that she faced, in finding the job related to her nano degree, if she faced any, and how did she overcome those? I know about your experience, but yeah, it's great to share with everybody also.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that I agree with Celeste and Edward that networking does help a lot. Like the first job that I'm here, like I found it via LinkedIn. I've searching for jobs for like 3 months, but I was unable to land any job. So my brother suggested me that, more than 50% of the jobs, they're not even listed online. Like you get those jobs through networking. So within a month, I sent around 500 connection requests on LinkedIn. I know it's very spammy, but yeah, I did connect with a lot of people within a month. And I told them that I'm looking for a digital marketing job. If you know any job or if you know someone who is hiring, just let me know. And you won't believe, like out of 100 people, you receive at least 70, 80 replies, because most of the people on LinkedIn, they are very helpful. They're like, it's time to give back to the community. So I even got in touch with my mentor, and she wrote me a message that, throughout my life, a lot of people have helped me. So now it's time to give back to the community. I would help you in every possible way. So I reached out to one of my friend, and she was looking for a digital marketer, and there I got my first job. So that's how networking helps you. So and one thing I would like to say is don't send connection request. Do send them with a note, like what exactly you want from them. Otherwise, it looks like spamming people. So yeah, that's my personal advice. Like, do send them a note, like how do you know them, what exactly you want from them, and just introduce yourself. It helps a lot.
Great, thanks Omega on this. And I was actually about to ask this, like, okay, so we talk about networking. Yeah, I mean, once we get into that kind of panic mode, hey, we want to, we really want to get the job. We want to take all those desperate actions to reach to the people. We'll definitely would reach out to the, the friends to friends of the friends just to get that kind of opportunity. But I think maybe if you could share more about what do you think now is the best effective strategy to get the networking, and what should a person do to effectively network so that he or she would able to see some results from it. I think you already mentioned it, Mega. Maybe others can tell.
Yeah, sure.
I think, yeah, talking to what Mega was getting at, I think it's very important both to say what it is that you're looking for when you're networking, but it goes two ways. If you're, during the networking process, able to find out what the person you're talking to is looking for as well, that can help, and then you can actually build up relationships with people through the networking process. And it's not just about getting referrals or finding out whether a company might be a suitable fit. But once you expand your network, it's really hard to guess what sort of opportunities might come about. And, something might come along that really surprises you.
One thing I would add too is that networking can also be used for development purposes. An example is I had a friend who worked at Google, and I wasn't applying to Google. I had no interest in trying to get a referral or connection there, but I did have them look over my resume, and I asked them to give me some feedback, on whether it was in the right tone and whether I was saying some of the key things that would need to leap off the page, at least in the tech sector, because they were in the sector that I was interested in, even though not the company. And so I had someone run interviews with me. A different friend sat and ran interviews with me, and there was someone who did hiring for their company, and they kind of knew what they were talking about. There's also digital platforms that'll pair you with a mock interviewer to work with each other if you don't have someone at home to work with. But you can leverage your network to find people who are doing well from your perspective of what well means to you, and then talk to them. How did they get there? What did they do? Can they look over your resume? Can they look over your cover letter? It doesn't have to be that they are the person that's going to get you that job, but they can be the person that tells you how they got where they are and gives you kind of a blueprint to follow. So that's worth mentioning as well.
Great. Yeah, I think it's pretty valuable, and we already have resume and career services, resume reviews and cover letter reviews in career portal. So I actually want to talk about this. So I think we believe that career services on the resume and the cover letter is a valuable way to get the advice and polishing those documents. So do you have any advice on how to make the most of those resources, as in the reviews services that in the career portal?
It's very useful to get a review of your material. If you think that your GitHub profile or your LinkedIn is already polished, it's really helpful just to get somebody else to look at it who might have a different perspective. Depending on where you are in your job search, you might need a little bit more support from those career services. But touching on that, but also what Celeste was talking about in terms of reaching out to your network, the idea of an informational interview is very, very important. It can give you all sorts of insight into how people operate in the industry that you want to move into or the company that you move into. And simply offering to buy somebody a coffee and in return for 15 minutes of their time can be a big help in terms of getting yourself out there. And also it helps you build up confidence. I remember when I first started networking, it was my least favorite part of the job search. I'm not really a people person, and it's something that took a lot of practice in order to build up the confidence to simply start talking to people, especially in a situation where you feel like you have to sell yourself. And, you know, it's imposter syndrome is another big part of it. No matter how good you are, you're always going to feel like the people around you know more than you do. And that's been the case in every job I've started. It happens in interviews, whether I'm the interviewer or the interviewee. And often the case, that's not necessarily a problem. People know different things, and whether you have experience in the industry or not, there's something that you can bring to the table that is going to be of value to the team that you could be working on.
Great. Right. Celeste and Mega, I think if you could share about your experience, you know, with the resume, and you know, what are the ways that it's really, you know, people can effectively use it now.
You know, earlier my LinkedIn profile was a very basic profile, like it lacked so many things. So when I submitted my profile for review, you know, reviewer told me a lot of things, like there was a checklist. So the first amazing thing was they wrote me, they, you know, made me write a long story in the description. So I wrote a story. So when I applied for a job, the first thing my recruiter told me that your story on LinkedIn was amazing. So I think it helped me to at least start a conversation. So it is the first thing. That another thing is earlier I didn't have much projects listed on LinkedIn. Now I have like 4 or 5 of them. Another thing is I also attached my resume, and earlier it was also the basic one. Then I designed it because I saw that, you know, in the checklist there were a lot of things that I didn't mention earlier. So yeah, it was of great help. Like from a basic thing to a professional thing, career services did help me a lot.
Yeah, same actually. I thought I was doing pretty well on my resume until I sent it in and got the feedback. Well, no, actually, until I looked at the checklist and realized there was a lot that I was missing. But it was really helpful to me to have a template, to have a blueprint of here are the sections, here is how you approach them, here's what you should have on there, both for LinkedIn and for the resume. And actually, I took lots of screenshots and copy pasted lots of things to store away forever. And reference always, but the LinkedIn particularly, I was like, oh yeah, I'm so strong on LinkedIn, recruiters reach out to me, it's all gravy. And then I realized I didn't have any projects. I realized actually that I had no idea how to handle my privacy settings. I didn't know what was public and what was private. And because of this review, I had to go in there and go, oh, I can actually select individual things, whether I want them to be shown or not shown to the public, which I had no idea about. So I was really at a basic level, which I did not even realize until Udacity showed me what it would look like to level up and help me do that.
Great, yeah, and I can also tell from my experience, we always, you know, we all have been there. I mean, I also struggle a lot with my LinkedIn profile. So yeah, and definitely, I think all those valid points that you know, talk about, you know, it's just not about the reviews. I think the way that you use the entire ecosystem of career services, starting with the LinkedIn, GitHub, you know, services, then interacting the community. I think a lot of, uh, I think we shouldn't, I think my approach would say definitely LinkedIn is the biggest platform, but I think the bigger than that, I feel currently we should be part of the community that we're learning. We all are learners. We all walking on the same path, although our, maybe the destination is different, but we all walking the same line. So I think the best way is first connect in the community, because there would be some people who may be just learning new stuff, but they may have an, a job opening in their company, and they're looking for some talented people like you who already want to do something in their life, and they already on a path of self-learning. So yeah, that's one way of looking at the things. So guys, I actually wanted to ask you a lot of questions, but I think we just ran out of time from my end to ask you those questions. Let's give this opportunity now to the students. They have written a lot of questions, so I'll take my time one by one going through and ask you the questions. Some directly would be, let's just say, pointed to just one person. It'd just be general and it's general to everybody. So I'll do my best to accommodate all those questions as much as I can. But yeah, so let's begin with that section. And thanks again, guys, for that. It was really helpful. I can say that each one of the participants would be really helpful, and they'll be I'm sure they'll be really looking forward to have more events like this. All right. So now talking about the questions there in the chat, let me just take that through real quick. Okay, so there was actually one question. Okay, let me start first with this is from Prashant Goel to Edward. So he's actually says, okay, just the feedback. He says the character engine seems to be really great on the website on Spirit AI. You want to congratulate on that, and it finds it really interesting. Okay, so there's actually a question from Cosman. He says that how was your approach to job hunting process, and how much time? I think you've already talked about what was your process to each. It was somebody tried with LinkedIn, someone actually went talked with a friend of friend, and I think Edward must have tried on the different platforms. But how much time did it take you guys to complete this? I think it'll be very different, but maybe if you can just share a bit about how much time you took to find the current role, that'll be much helpful.
Yeah, for my current role, it was somewhat atypical. I made the decision after starting a new contract at the Department of Environment in the UK. That's when I wanted to transition into AI, and I thought, right, I'll use the career services. I had one-to-one coaching with Angela McDonald, which was excellent and very helpful, and she encouraged me to update my LinkedIn settings in order to show that I was interested, and she helped me write the sort of the goals for LinkedIn. And the recruiter contacted me for this role 8 days later. So that was incredibly lucky. I expected it to take 12 to 18 months, and it was a lot shorter. Previous job searches have been longer. I think it depends on what you're looking for. And if you're looking for something really specific, if your requirements are, a certain salary level and remote work and in a certain industry, it'll take you longer to find the right role. But if you're a little bit more flexible and there's one particular thing that you want to achieve out of your next role, you might find an opportunity comes your way that you weren't expecting.
Great. Right. Okay. Megha, you want to talk about it? I think you had very, you were able to find a job in really quick time. I think how many days it was?
Just a month.
Just a month. Great. And what
Yeah,
about you?
but I was a little specific regarding what kind of a job role I want. I wanted a remote work because I want to travel the world and work freely from anywhere. So that's why I was looking for remote jobs. So that's why I took around 30 days to find a job. But if only my needs were a little less specific, I would have landed a job in like 10 or 15 days maybe.
Great, but I think months is still it's a very short considering, especially in digital marketing, a lot of competition.
Yeah.
What about you, Celeste? Yeah, thanks. What about you, Celeste? How much time did it take to find the current role?
Yeah, so for me, since it was a transition within my same company based on moving teams, The time period is 2 months because I had to go through a trial period of 2 months before I was approved to become a junior product manager, and then junior for about 6 months before I was approved to become a full product manager. So 2 months of proving, 2 months of basically every day is an interview. So that was a lot, but I did hopefully prove myself enough to get across the threshold.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, cool. So I think I think to each person the journey is very different, but yeah, I think the idea is to just be persistent about it and just keep pushing yourself. And although you won't see the result immediately, but there definitely be result afterwards. Right. Okay. So there's one question from Mega, which I think Mega Jan has already answered to the question by Mega about how to begin. So or there's one question from Prashant. Okay, so Prashant, I think from collectively, I can say on their behalf that if you're fresher, the chances to first thing is you should utilize the services which are there. Begin, focusing on the networking in the community, outside the community. If you are into machine learning industry, work on a GitHub profile. There are another platform that you can utilize. I think Kaggle is one of them, that one of those platforms where you can showcase some of your stuff. It's more of a data science, but yeah, I mean, so the idea is if you use more platform like this to maximize, to showcase your projects, that's the best way of going about it. And definitely taking those reviews will help you eventually to at least land up the interview, and then it's probably it's the time for you to shine actually on that on that day. Okay, right, so moving forward, so there's one question, Sheshta. I think Sheshta, we've also talked about the job search in detail. So I think they have already talked about how their dream, how Nanodegree have helped them one way and the other. I mean, in case of Celeste, she made a transition from her existing role in the company, then moving to project manager. With Edward, changing from, I think there's one of the questions that people actually want to ask you, Edward, how difficult was it to shift from a role in web development now in more of a deep learning area in machine learning or artificial intelligence? Yeah.
Sure. So the path that I ended up taking was being a member of a software engineering team at an AI company. Then by helping solve problems that were more in the AI domain, I ended up in a role that sort of straddled the data science and software engineering domains. And by helping bridge those two teams and those two domains, you sort of become the glue in the team. And that offers all sorts of opportunities rather than trying to go in and disregard your prior experience and say, that's what I used to do, this is what I want to be doing. Find a way to try and leverage what you already know and what you're really good at, and apply that into a new domain, or to try and enhance the capabilities of the team by leveraging your experience and your knowledge of the area that you want to move into.
Great, thanks a lot. All right, there's one question for Celeste by C. Flurry. So he, so C. Flurry wants to know, like, Celeste, do you know any person who actually transitioned from web developer or engineering background into product area? If they did, if you know any, and what kind of skills that one needs to learn to move into product area?
Definitely. Thanks for the question. I'll also use this kind of as my wrap up because I do have to jump off right at the hour. I've got another meeting to run to. Let's see. Yes, first of all, yes, the answer is yes. A lot of people who start in engineering or software development move into product, and it's people that are particularly interested in user issues and user pain points. They want to understand the customer. They're usually not satisfied just being told, here's what we're building and how to build it, go. They want to know why we're building it, who we're building it for. Those are product people. And so there is a role called TPM, or technical PM, that is basically one step towards product away from engineering. So it's kind of a spectrum. You can go from engineering, TPM, there's an inbound PM, and then there's kind of an outbound PM. So within this spectrum, you get further and further away from the actual coding. The technical PM is the one that's really still in the weeds of it, but is still kind of doing the product work of understanding who you're serving and why you're serving them and how to communicate that across teams, which is really the core of it. So thank you everyone who came. Feel free, I saw some folks asking how to connect. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Feel free to visit our careers page. I saw some people asking about how to pursue an opportunity with Next. I'm always open to hearing from you. So with that, I'm going to have to hop off, but I'll leave these lovely folks to wrap this up for you. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Celeste, for for your valuable time, and thanks again for extending the help of joining people on LinkedIn and helping them through find an opportunity in your organization. Thanks again for everything. Cheers. Bye. Okay. Right. So guys, sorry, I think we just so we're on. We're almost a minute more than the usual, the time that we have scheduled for the event. But yeah, I just want to highlight the stuff I think we have already said, and all the alumni have said very highly regarded to start networking. And networking, if you want to start, what we will do is eventually is to share the alumni profile in the careers channel and student hub, so that you can network with them. Also start networking with the other students in the community. Once you send a request to these to these alumni, please just in the thread just write sent, so that we know that you have sent a request. We also can connect with them if the case they wanted to connect with us and wanted to know who has sent and how they've sent it. So yeah, just the one way about it. So please start do the networking. And I want to thank you each and everyone for this event, for joining this webinar. And we'll be sharing you an email wherein we would like to take a feedback from you. Since it's the first event, I'm sure everyone must have enjoyed this, must have learned a lot from it. And if you really want to, if you really want to have these kind of events happen more and more, then please share a feedback, share your love about this program so we can do more. Also, stay active in the careers channels to know about important announcement. And if you have any questions, please drop an email to career-support@udacity.com. All right, so on just ending this, again, thank you so much, Edward and Megha, for giving your valuable time and helping the students. I'm sure their journeys may not be similar as yours, but I'm sure they'll able to recollect what all that you said, and hoping to have a wonderful careers like you guys are having, in your, in the current area that you're doing.
Yeah, it was a wonderful session, and I would like to thank everyone for joining in here. And just like, one of my mentors told me, it's time to give back to the community. So just reach out to me if you need any help with, finding the right job. I would be happy to help always.
Thanks so much again. And guys, if you have any questions, please just write in the careers channels and we'll take it through with them. And yeah, Edward, would you like to say something to them before we sign off?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen to our stories. And please do feel free to get in touch with LinkedIn. Just mention that you were a participant here, and that'd be great.
Cool.
Yeah, sending a note is important.
Yeah.
That's very well mentioned. Yes. All right. Thanks so much again. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day ahead. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.